Hello everyone, this is Defense Politics Asia, and this is the situation report or the summary for the day of 1253 to 1258, 30th July to 4th of August. And that's like 6 days. So 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, 6 days. So correct. Yeah, it's a bit too long. Yeah, so there were a lot of things on the map, but don't worry, I'll keep it simple. Russia is winning. Okay, that's it. Thank you everybody. Thank you for watching. I'll see you guys. No, just joking. Let's go on to the first front line, the Sumi front. So over at the Sumi front, because there's so many days, basically I'm going to go through a very macro kind of a perspective rather than the usual SITREP. Over at the Takino sector, there is mention of Belivka. This is a return of the reporting. This only happens yesterday, so this is a bit unusual. We shall see how this goes. And then over in the main front line at the Sumi front region, the Ukrainians actually managed to carve out some kind of a increased control of territory. I've covered this in the frontline changes report. Fighting, however, is still in the region at Andriivka, Olexandrivka, Kochakivka, Kindrativka, Verkine, Yablunivka, Yunakivka, Marine. Geolocation of Ukrainian forces in various positions, but basically this is the only frontline change. The Russians basically is still busy trying to create that buffer zone. Yunakivka is still not captured, so general situation remains strategically largely unchanged. I also mentioned multiple times, the Ukrainian captured ground is all open ground, largely open ground, and you can see the forest is very sparse. So it's not really good position. They basically captured quite useless land. So the Russians are holding up a very good position. So that's important to note. There's nothing over in the rest of the Sumi front except Okiv was mentioned once. Okip is mentioned once on the 2nd of August, but not important. We move on to the Kharkiv front. This is Kharkiv. South of Kharkiv, there is a geolocation of a missile strike, allegedly UAV storage, not super important. Over in the Kozacha Lopan sector, fighting is reported towards Kozacha Lopan and Khoptivka. Khoptivka is a bit interesting because yesterday, this reports only started yesterday. Ryaba mentioned that the Russian forces has entered the territory through the Khoptivka checkpoint, and there is fighting in this region here. This might actually be a new offensive operation, and they are probably trying to take Khoptivka, and the fighting is also moving in the direction of Kozacha Lopan. So maybe the Russians are wanting to create yet another front line to further stretch the Ukrainian forces. I don't think this is impossible. This has been something that I've mentioned quite a long time, although the focus for my reporting or analysis is on Kozacha Lopan, not exactly Khoptivka. Khoptivka was captured long time ago. How long ago is super long ago. Anyway, the geolocation of a Ukrainian tank was geolocated, clearly show that there is some kind of intensity of fighting in this sector here. So that's something to take note of. So there's nothing at the Lipsy sector. Over the Vchan sector, there is fighting reported at Vchansk as well as Vchansky Kotori. Not particularly important, very routinized about this. Fighting is reported over in Okremivka. This is reported twice on the 2nd and the 4th, both by the Russian Defense Ministry. Might be shelling, might not actually be some kind of attack. So that is the action over Okremivka. This is Vchansk. And then this is the Khoptivka Kozacha Lopan sector. So this is a strategic view. We move on to the Voronezh front. So this is Voronezh. North of Voronezh, we have fighting reported at Milove. Along the Oskil River, we have fighting reported at Konyamka, Voroshchansky, Kolozyazny, Krasny Pershi, and Fyholivka. So there's this kind of operations here. We shall see how this goes. Kolozyazny was mentioned on the 4th. This Voroshchansky is on the 31st. I mean, 31st also mentioned Kolozyazny, but nothing really stands out. It looks pretty routine at this moment for me. Further south from this position, we go into the Kupiansk front. At the Kupiansk front, there was fighting reported at Kindrashivka, Holubivka, Kupiansk, Petropavlivka, Stepova Novoselivka, towards Pischane, and shelling reported at Osinovo. Generally speaking, is pretty stale at this moment. There's not much of the changes, except for one small little change at Stepova Novoselivka, but it does not mean much because there was no more frontline changes since this was on the 1st, and since then there was no more updates. So I don't take too much concern to that for now. Geolocation of a T-64 tank was hit at Pischane. So largely pretty routine. There's nothing new regarding this sector here. We move on to the Borova front. At the Borova front, fighting is reported at Zarizove, Luzova, shelling is reported at Lisnastinka, and as well as mentioning of Chernaskina was mentioned in the reporting. There's nothing special about this, very low intensity in my opinion. We move on to the next front line at the Oskil front. So this is Oskil, and this is basically the Oskil front. This is the northern flank of the Leman front. I can cover these both at the same time. Fighting is reported at Kharkivka, Ohievka, Novi Maya, Rikodub, Karpivka, Serene, Sandriholove, Zelina Dolena, Kolozyazi, Myrne, Yampolivka. Shelling is reported at Novoselivka. So you can see over the past 6 days, the fighting is basically in all directions. There's some Ukrainian geolocation, Russian geolocation, resulted in very tiny frontline changes. The main frontline changes is in this sector, where the Russian forces is pushing in the direction of Sandriholove in two different prongs of attack. One further south, heading into the south of Sandriholove. The other one is actually a bit more direct towards Sandriholove down the road, but generally speaking, not much update since. This update was since the 31st of July, so this we can see that basically there's not much change since this 5 days since. So we shall wait and see how this goes. And a bit of admin is that I think I should do the SITREP a bit more regularly. Maybe I'll do it in this kind of format, very macro, rather than go into the details. And then I'll do the details in battlefield analysis. So maybe that will allow me to do SITREPs with less pain. Because going through SITREP is actually, it's painful, because it's a very long report. And if I can simplify it in a very macro form, maybe that helps. I'm not sure, but we shall see how this goes. I will try to continue to experiment, whatever it is. And frontline history reports are out. There's a monthly one, the whole of July, and then there's one that is over the past week. Both is on Patreon or YouTube membership or Boosty or locals. As long as you're in the monthly subscription, you'll be able to see it. Yeah. So but I will be publishing these two on a delayed telecast, just to show people, show you guys, what's in it for you if you subscribe. But in the future, I may not show it. I will not put it to public, but I will find a good window to put it in, so you guys can watch it. And but it should be soon. So over in the Leman front, along with Siversk. So the southern part of the Leman front and the Siversk front, we have fighting reported at Toretsk. Shelling is reported at Leman, Dibrova, through the Serebransky forestry towards both Hryhorivka and Syryanka. Syryanka and Hryhorivka itself have fighting of their own. Fighting is reported at Siversk, Verkhamokanyamske, Ivanodarivka, Vimka, towards Vanivka, Svidorivka, and probably attacking towards Dronivka or shelling, and also towards Yampil. And so you can see this is pretty intense. This is one of the main fighting regions here, the main offensive operations, with Russian forces taking some grounds in Toretsk. They have some success, basically on the verge of full capture of Toretsk, also resulting in some very big frontline changes in that sector. So the geolocation of Russian forces basically shows that the Russian forces have taken almost the entirety of the southern half of Toretsk. Ukrainian mapping, however, map it that the attack actually coming from the east, resulting in this kind of a weird structure with a arbitrary and circumvent, which is most likely under Russian control. This is probably under Russian control. And over in the Siversk front region, the Russian forces have been geolocated attacking towards Siversk. They are also trying to push northward, which also shows that the Ukrainians have positions at least in this sector here. The Russians are closing down the salient in the south of Kherson. So that happened. And so that is the current situation. Since the geolocation on the 1st of August, we still do not have a Russian push into Siversk yet. This have not happened. So we shall see when this could happen. Maybe the Russians are busy consolidating the positions because they are capturing too much grounds in too short of a time. You need a lot of consolidation of the grounds before you can actually launch an offensive. I think that's the main gist of the thing. Yeah, because if not, then you do not have a good base to attack from. South of Bakhmut was a big collapse. Russian forces basically overrun Novosibirsk in the latest geolocation. The entire south of Bakhmut is entirely taken, and the west of Ivano-Darivka is also overrun by the Russian forces. So this push towards the south of Siversk is currently happening, and fighting is already mentioned at Vimka and towards Zvernivka. So these are all very significant operations that we are now witnessing. Moving into the Bakhmut front, so this is Bakhmut. At the Bakhmut front, fighting is reported at Vasyukivka, towards Bondarne, Minkivka, Novomarkove, Chasiv Yar, Stupovsky, and Priteshny. The one thing to note is that all this in the north is all sporadic. These are not consistent attacks. Like you see, there's only one report on the 30th at Vasyukivka. Bondarne was on the 31st. Minkivka is only on the 30th, and then and then for Novomarkove was on the 30th and the 2nd. So all these are very sporadic attacks. So I think this is a part of the reason why I think if I overdo like too many days don't do a SITREP, it might be very confusing. So I think I will try to do it a bit more. Like I said, it's important to see how to manage this, in a way that I can swallow it. Because if I cannot swallow, then I have to spit it out. But I'm not gay, so it doesn't matter. This northern part, this is a geolocation of some Ukrainian position getting hit by a FAB, the Russian airstrike in the north. At Chasiv Yar, the Russian announced the capture of Chasiv Yar. In terms of our mapping wise, I haven't declared the capture of Chasiv Yar because of this little tiny bit. Like, no joke, this is the little tiny bit that is still claimed as grey zone by the Ukrainian side. So, which is why I haven't declared the Chasiv Yar captured. But otherwise, based on the geolocations, like the entire Shevchenko sector has been taken over. The Yuzhny sector is almost entirely also taken by the Russian forces. The entire central part has been lost to the Russians according to Ukrainian mapping. So these are all signs that Chasiv Yar actually have largely fallen, effectively. So it's just that on our mapping, we don't have it just yet. So that's the thing here. Over in the south, over in the east. So let's see how do I do this. Yeah, okay, let's cover this first. The Russian forces, according to Frontline Changes report, already noted the Russian front line is now going along the canal based on the mapping by the Ukrainian mapping. So this is already noted, so I'm not going to rehash again. And at the Toretsk front. So this is Toretsk city. Toretsk front is very interesting. The Ukrainians drew a very long tentacle. Let me show you. The long tentacle. So this is Deep State UA's mapping. In case you cannot see Deep State UA. Okay, Deep State UA's mapping. In their Toretsk, they draw a very, very long appendage out. Very long, but thin. And they have another one, but this is a gray zone. This long update, this is the latest update, does not even change our map at all. It doesn't change our map at all. This is already declared captured by the Russian forces on our mapping based on geolocation. So the tentacle, is it stretches all the way here. It's not even in our map. Like it. So this is. But the fact that they actually draw all the way here, it does just shows that this opening here is now just less than 3 kilometers. So, but of course, this kind of tentacle don't exist usually because you can basically pincer it, right? If the Russians penetrate it just like this, you could have cut it off. You can chop it off and castrate it, but they did not. So the fact that they did not and don't dare to talk about that just shows that actually the wider region is already taken by the Russian forces. So that's the main gist of the thing. So strategically, let's cover a bit of the strategic situation in this sector here. Fighting is reported at Bilohora, Oleksandrivka, Dilievka, some Russian advance based on geolocation, moving up north. Fighting is reported at Ivanopilia, Plishevka, Klebanbik. Ukrainian mapping have basically considered the huge salient that is currently around Shebenivka, and it continued to string on the daily basis over the past 2 days. Geolocation of Ukrainian forces at Klebanbik, not important. Russian forces captured Olexandrivka, advanced in the northwest of Romanivka, and fighting is reported at Romanivka. And Krimsky somehow is mentioned for some unknown reason, and fighting is reported at Toretsk. So that is the general picture of the strategic picture around this sector. Further geolocation of Ukrainian forces at Bereztok, Ivanopilia was noted. Shelling is reported at Bereztok, probably based on the geolocation. So this is the general picture at the Toretsk front. The Russians are attacking in all different various positions. And the Ukrainian mapping is still catching up on reality. In my opinion, they have disregarded a lot of geolocation in the Toretsk front. Like literal geolocation of Russian forces on the ground. They have ignored it entirely. So because it does destroy their narrative about Toretsk. So I think that's the reason why they do not map it. So tentatively, but no, in our mapping, Toretsk is already captured. So no, and there is clear signs that there is no more battles in Toretsk. The lack of geolocations, of airstrikes, or battles, or reporting about the situation in Toretsk just shows that Toretsk is already a history. There is no longer the front line. So then, you can see the latest geolocation is so far away. If the battle is still in Toretsk, there's no reason the Russians is going that direction. So, and the Ukrainians are already conceding all these salient. So that is a clear sign of what is happening. So that is the situation over in the Toretsk front. Moving further on, over into the northern flank of the Pokrovsk front. Do I have the same orientation? Yeah, this front is very big. So let's orientate a bit. Pokrovsk, Minokhrad. And so a wider front line, this is the northern flank. And then we have the Minokhrad region, the Pokrovsk region, and then the southern flank. Pokrovsk is a very big front line. So over in the northern flank, let me see how do I orientate this. So fighting is reported over in Stepanivka, Rusinya, Potavka, Popivya, towards Volodymyrivka, Novotoretsk, Mayat, Boykivka, Fedorivka, Zatishok, and the rest I will cover in a while. This you can't see it. The Russian forces secured and captured Novotoretsk. This is now confirmed. I didn't put a flag. Then geolocation of Russian forces. Generally, this front line is rather static. Because we are talking about 6-day report. So other than the Novotoretsk wise, the front line looks rather static. There's no frontline changes in this sector because the main focus for the Russian forces right now is over on the north of Minokhrad. So this is Minokhrad. The main fighting seems to be in this sector. So fighting is reported at Boykivka, Fedorivka, Zatishok. Russian forces entered and probably captured Sukatsk. There is fighting now moving towards Bilitsk. Geolocation of Russian forces entering into the mining plant east of Rodinsky. Fighting is reported towards Rodinsky. Geolocation of Russian forces entering into Cheverny Liman. Fighting is reported Razine, which is probably outdated by now. If Novoekonomichny is still being mentioned by the Ukrainian side, fighting is also reported in Marolubivka, according to the Ukrainians as well. Yeah, it's also by the Ukrainians, but it's a one-off. and fighting is being reported near Minograd. So this is the entire eastern flank. This is already mentioned further up north. So, and the Russian forces is now moving really quickly. They can attack Rodinsky directly, and Shovony Liman is now under battle. They could also go directly for the road, but they have to overcome some fortifications west of Suketsky. So this is happening really fast, and the shelling is reported at Vilny, very far away. So it's not super important, super far away. And I think there was an announcement of capture. I think it's another place, I guess. So that's the situation over in that sector. Over in the along this static line of the twin city of Minograd and Pokrovsk, in the past 6 days, fighting is reported. Myro-Lvivka as mentioned, at Promin, Lysivka, Novo-Ukrainka. The Russian forces announced the capture of Novo-Ukrainka. Fighting is moving towards Novopalivka, and there is fighting is reported at Vivrove. The Russian forces geolocated inside of Pokrovsk. There could be a pocket inside of it. There's also this operations that is pushing in the southwestern direction. Southwestern part of Pokrovsk is getting penetrated, and in this movement also suggests that the Litovichy and Vivrove should be under Russian control right now. Fighting is reported at Pokrovsk. Geolocation of Ukrainian forces in the north of Pokrovsk, and not important, and fighting is reported at Kotliny. So this is the strategic situation. So this line here typically is a static line, but we are starting to see the Russians starting to push in these directions. So in the south of Pokrovsk, this is the main situation that is happening over in Pokrovsk front. We shall see how this going to affect or whether is this even a real thing, because this could be just DRG operations. DRGs are reconnaissance forces or sabotage forces. In certain military, like in Singapore, UK, these are commandos where they do penetration and penetration, and then search and destroy, sabotage operations, ambushes within inside behind enemy lines, this kind of operations. But in the Ukraine war, I noticed they just simply call this DRG, which basically consolidate a lot of different roles in the Western military style of setup into one. Like in Singapore military, recon is a separate force. The commandos is a separate force. So it's a lot of things all merged together. So they call it DRGs. So that's the main thing here. So we shall see whether this will become a real thing, whether it's a real offensive on Pokrovsk. Tentatively, I have some reservation. So it could be just DRG operations, including this geolocation here. Over in the west of Pokrovsk, that's Kotliny. I think we mentioned that. Okay, never mind. Fighting is reported at Kotliny, Udashny. Some frontline change in the south of Udashny, not super important per se. Fighting is reported towards Novopihorodny, Buravka, and Kotlyarivka. So this, this is pretty static. There's nothing special about this front line. We move further south. Over in the Olexandrivka sector, which is this is Olexandrivka. In this sector here, fighting is reported over in Kurakhove. The front line is collapsing in this sector north of Olexandrivka. Geolocation confirms the Russians have captured Novo-Ukrainka, Zelenikud, and fully secured Olexandrivka itself. So this entire region has fallen to the Russians, but strategically doesn't change anything because this is an irrelevant strategic position already. Those kind of tiny frontline change here is not super important on the general picture. Fighting is reported at Dashny towards Filia. Fighting was mentioned at Yalta, Zaporizhia, Zerka, which are all code reportings. These are all reported by the Ukrainians once. And these are already history. I don't think these are reality. So that's the situation over at the Olexandrivka sector. Very irrelevant generally the sector here now, because the crazy things are happening around this area here in the Koma front. So let me see, how do I orientate this? Okay, let's do it like this. So as mentioned just now, Yalta, Zaporizhia, Zerka, Filia. So these are already mentioned. In the Koma front, we have fighting reported at Zeleny High. Towards Andreyevka, Kletsove, probably coming down from the road as well. Some extended frontline changes here, very small one. Fighting is reported at Pipdotny, Tolstoy, Myrny, Peribudova, Koma, Fedorivka. Somehow there's a strengthening of the front line as the Ukrainian mapping continue to give up land in their mapping. Fighting is reported at Voskresenka, Olexandrivka, and there's Novoselivka is mentioned. Further south, I will mention later. And the Ukrainian mapping literally looked like this. This general picture, there's not much change. There's a lot of fighting all over the place. But I think the Russians are just busy consolidating the positions. For example, this entire area should be under Russian control. This doesn't make sense to be under Ukrainians. And I also believe that the Russians have expanded their zone of control in this sector here. We don't have the frontline changes to confirm this yet. And of course, this is the impossible salient. This should be under Russian control. However, this literally is in Ukrainian mapping. And you can just imagine how does this ever going to work. So let me pull out the Ukrainian mapping again, just to prove a point. So you can see what the hell is this? So this is Koma, Peribudova, Myrny, Voskresenka. And how, if you are Ukrainian forces here, let's say they have it here, how are they going to reinforce and resupply? Are you sure you're going to travel like this to resupply? How? It's not even humanly possible. You just die along the way. This opening here is very small. So if we go back to this mapping here, from this building to just the next building, this is the 1 kilometer. From either side, they could have gunned them down with just simple rifles. Don't even need machine guns. There's zero ways to penetrate, to go through here and to reinforce. Not to mention, there is not even a single forest line that they can just walk through. The latest, this forest line here is already given up by the Ukrainians in the latest update, in the latest mapping. They've given this up. Which means that the tree lines now is like this. These are all the tree lines. Are you going to just run across all the in the open ground like this and wait for FPV drone to kill you? So this is impossible. This is an impossible salient. And as I always say, impossible salients are impossible. So that is just not a possible thing. This is all cope. In further south in this position, we have the latest report. The Russians announced the capture of Yamvarskoye. Yamvarskoye is also known as Sifneve in Ukrainian renaming. And so the Russians claim they have captured this, which means the Russian forces may have probably advanced in this sector here, going further. And fighting is reported at Novoselivka, Voronezh, Komishuvakha, Novokhiyovka. Shelling is reported at Ternova, Berezove. Fighting is reported at Vinnypole, Shevchenko. And so this is the general strategic situation here. Of course, the strengthening of the front line in this east of Voskresenka was mentioned. So let me redraw that. And Olexandrivka, So yeah, so this is the current situation in this sector here. The fact that the Russians have captured Shifneve is pretty significant because they have now a very big foothold into the Dnipropetrovsk region, and they could continue to hit west and totally ignoring the Ukrainian front line, and that can collapse the whole front line. Potentially, they can also hit into the rear position of this defense line where the Ukrainians have a very long defense line. And the thing is, you don't even need to hit it. You just cut off the supply line. This will be like a big disaster for the Ukrainian forces. So that's the situation here. Further in the south of those chaos, so Ternova, Berezove, shelling is reported at Novokhiyovka. So Vinnypole, as mentioned, Komishuvakha. So Russian forces are fighting at Novosilka. They have secured Zeleny Pole, and fighting is reported here. Temerivka is allegedly captured, and then Novopil is captured by the Russian forces, and they have secured it. secure the surroundings further in the southwest and the west, and fighting moving towards Novohievka. Novohievka. Yeah. So basically, that is the current situation in the south. This area here also, it looks like the Russians are consolidating the position. So this Koma front, by all accounts, is the most active front line, along with the Pokrovsk front, basically in the northern flank. So these are the two biggest operations the Russians are conducting, and they are not the only offensive operations. As mentioned, Siversk is another one, Leman is another one. So, and then we have now a new one in Karthif. So the Russians are definitely stretching the Ukrainians in all directions, and so that's the situation in this sector. So over in, well, I used the very simplified. I don't also took half an hour. Oh my god! So it is what it is. No, yeah. Anyway, at the Huaypole sector, findings reported at Ohivske, Petrovka, and Melanivka. So some operations here. The Petrovka and Ohivske is pretty recent. Both has been reported on the 4th yesterday. So something to take note of. Wonder if the Russians are going to do a new offensive in this direction. This is Huaypole, by the way. And then we move further west. Over in the Orikhiv sector, at the Orikhiv sector, fighting is reported at Novoandrievka, Orikhiv, Malatomashka, and below here. Yeah. So similarly, these are all very sporadic attacks. But again, Malatomashka and Novoandrievka is mentioned just yesterday. So this is something to take note of, whether this will become something more. But from experience, usually not. So, and then over in the Kamsk sector, the Ukrainians counterattack into Kamsk after the Russians captured it. After the Russians captured Kamsk. Before that, the Russians did attack Plavny, Stepnohursk, Lukyansk, Pelivka, and Malyshabaki. The Ukrainian geolocations show the Ukrainians are taking the threats around here very seriously. Shelling is reported at Vasilyanka as well as Kurakhove. So that's the sector in this region here. So actually I could have zoomed in, but yeah, you can see the current situation. Ukrainian forces have penetrated back into the west of Kamsk. Russian forces consolidated the position, entered into Stepnohursk. So yeah, so that's the main gist. We shall see how will this evolve, but tentatively not much for now, because the 2nd of August was this geolocation of Ukrainian forces, and since then we have no more news. So nobody know what the hell is happening. And we move on to the last front line. And before I do that, press the like button, subscribe, and happy birthday to you if your birthday today. And yeah, check out the Patreon. And also we move on to the Kherson front. So at the Kherson front or the Kherson front, shelling is reported at Orhievka, Tokarivka, Antonivka, Kherson. Geolocation of Russian forces trying to destroy a bridge. They drop a FAB 3000 on the bridge, and the bridge only suffered a pothole. Just shows how ridiculous the construction during the Soviet era is. Fighting is reported at Sadove and Dnipropetrovsk, with the Russian forces securing the bridgehead over in the south of the opposite shore of the Dnipropetrovsk. So the Russian forces geolocated over on the opposite bank of Dnipropetrovsk, confirming the Russians have secured the bridgehead in this sector here. The settlement next to this bridge is unknown. The status is unknown. So you may have Ukrainian forces there, may not have. But yeah, tentatively no more updates since. So anyway, thank you for watching. Let me know what you think of this new style of doing the SITREP, where we don't go too much into the details, the tactical details, but just a very macro view. And so let me know. But it's not that much of a big difference. Maybe, yeah, I'm not sure. Just let me know what you think in the comment. I'll try to read as much as I can. And that's it. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next update.